first things first, I want to put a disclaimer on this, but it's also a disclaimer to keep me at a certain level. The book I'm going over today is it's political fiction, as simple as that. Plain as it's political fiction. In addition to that, it could also be considered Christian fiction, and I've heard people describe it that way. So I'm going to do my best, and it's going to be tough. I'm going to try the very hardest, absolute hardest I can, to get through this book without voicing my own opinions on what is currently going on in politics, and my opinions on religion as a whole. I will only comment on them as pertaining to this book is my hope. I may get caught up with myself. I may talk a little fast, and I may end up saying something that is inevitable from my mouth. But I had to state that, and just know that this is a political fiction book. It has also been referred to as a Christian fiction book. So Christian political fiction, you can imagine there's some very heavy opinions in here. I'm going to do my best to put my opinions on the book itself and not on the subject matter. This book is Ralph Reed's 2011, I believe, offering, Ballots and Blood. And first off, for a book that is sometimes considered, I've seen it, I say sometimes because I've seen it considered non-Christian fiction, but it opens up with a very unchristian-like setting where a senator is found dead in an apartment that is owned by a dominatrix service, and that's basically the domino that starts all of the whole mess that this book is about. They're coming up on midterm elections, and the Republicans are trying to win, they're trying to win the Senate to gain control, and it's basically all insider DC stuff. The author of this book, Ralph Reed, was a political consultant, if you will. Maybe was he a lobbyist? No, he was the chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He also worked on 7 U.S. presidential campaigns and advised 88 Senate, congressional, and gubernatorial, I cannot be the right word, campaigns in 24 states. Ralph Reed knows what's happening in politics. He's definitely familiar. Ralph Reed has been around elections. He knows the dirt that goes on. That being said, a lot of it seems almost fake. And I know that's probably not real. I mean, there may be a little bit of embellishment here and there, but some of the things that go on here, it's just like, wow. I mean, you hear stories, but then you still don't think that is happening. Either way, now I'm getting off track. I believe Ralph Reed writes himself into this book as the character Jay Noble, who is this star-studded campaign manager who gets sent. He's the superstar. He gets sent to different countries to help different leaders get into office. Realistically, the only interesting and deep character in the whole book. Everybody else very just very on the surface. There's nothing else under it, realistically. They're very generic characters. Very, you know what when you meet the character, you know what that character is going to be the rest of the book. The diehard Republicans who are being supported by this giant church lobby, you know how they're going to be. The televangelist, you know how he's going to be the whole way through the book. But I believe Jay Noble, the only interesting character in the book, let's be honest, is, I believe Ralph Reed wrote himself as that. I feel like he sees himself as that. Maybe he did see himself as that superstar, but I wouldn't mind seeing just a whole book of Jay Noble. The problem is this is not that. This is a lot of bullshit. A lot of the Democrats are evil. A lot of the Democrats are trying to ruin this country. A lot of we need to go to war. A lot of we need to show how strong we are as a country. A lot of just chest puffing, and I had to stop myself because I was moving down a road I didn't want to go down. This book is definitely very pro-Republican, very pro-war, very pro-faith, very pro everything except for human rights, it seems. The eventual story is that the senator was killed by the Iranians, because he was trying to finalize this bill. He was trying to pass this bill that would put sanctions on Iran on their nuclear program. Yet there would be a trigger in there where if they didn't meet the sanctions by a certain time, it would ensue military action. So they were kind of trying to slip a military bill underneath this sanctions bill, which was never done before. And once he dies, it throws everything into limbo. People are appointed to take over. People die. It's politics as usual. There's way too many people in this book. There's way too many elections that follows at one time. I mean, maybe if you are a politician, if you're into politics like that, you understand what's happening. Like you can understand and follow that much. It was too much for me, and I enjoy. Can't say enjoy. I know a bit about politics. Uh, Realistically, the book itself, it goes through all this. It goes through all the bill passing, all the legislation, all the campaigning, all the dirty underground of DC, and it builds and builds. And every page there's like another problem building and building and building, and nothing ever gets solved. It ends with they tell you who won the election, which kind of anticlimactic, and then none of the other issues are solved. They don't talk about what happened in with the Iran sanctions. They don't talk about the war. They don't talk about what happened in these different conspiracies that were going on. They don't talk about the charges that were brought up against certain politicians. It just is a mess to me. I enjoyed it as I was reading it, but as I saw when it was winding down, and I could see over the hill, and I could see that there was nothing over there. It was a cliff, because they don't let you down easy. They don't even let you down. It's not even a cliff. It's a plateau that there's not another side of. It's it let me down at the end. I will not be looking for another Ralph Reed book. And yeah, the Christian undertones were very strong and very in your face and very we're right. It was definitely from I could see how it could be considered Christian fiction because it was very aimed at people who are maybe the anti-Christian or not even anti-Christian, just trying to get the separation of church and state. It was against those people, and it was very clear. That being said, Ballots and Blood somehow I made it through this without talking about the current election, which is a miracle. But my review, my rating of Ballots and Blood by Ralph Reed, probably a 7, probably a 7 out of 10, because I enjoyed it while I was reading it. It had the potential to be great, but a lot of and not just wasn't great because I didn't agree with all of it, because that's not the point. I don't go into a book that's a novel or a piece of fiction wanting it to agree with me completely. I know that people do not agree with me. I know that there are other ideas out there. I don't have a problem with that. What I had a problem with is them telling me that my opinions are wrong the whole time and that I'm a bad person and that I'm who the enemy is through the whole book. There was never both sides told. That being said, it was good enough that no, I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe 7's too high. I'm thinking that I gave the Charlemagne Pursuit a 6.5, and I like that more than this. So I'm dropping it down. I'm dropping it down to a 6 because I did enjoy it, but it was not something that I would have ever chosen to go into had I known what it was. If this was a book about Jay Noble, I'm sold. Find me a book about Jay Noble's exploits, Jay Noble doing crazy shit around the world, being this political maniac genius, and I'm sold. But it wasn't. It was a lot of shit piled on top of other things that they never told you how they ended. I'm not happy with that sense at all. Either way, it's a 6 out of 10. Ballots and Blood by Ralph Reed. I don't recommend it. If you want to give it a shot, let me know what you think. If you've read it, let me know what you think. It wasn't for me. And it wasn't until I was 200 pages in that I realize on the back it was endorsed by Sean Hannity. That should have been a key of who this book is aimed for, and it's not me. This book is very very pro white guy. It just seems like it's just a bunch of white dudes sitting around talking about how much money they have. One quick thing before I wrap this up, that something about this book that actually really did bother me. There's not one time that a woman pops up in this book and her legs aren't described, or her figure isn't described. They're never. There wasn't a woman mentioned in here that was a character. There was women mentioned in here as objects, and that fucking bothered me. I just got a little upset. But it was very off-putting the way anytime a woman showed up, it's, oh, her strong calves and the kind of shoes she wore. No, it doesn't matter. Tell me about her as a person. I'm dropping it back down, 5.5. I forgot completely. I kind of forgot about that woman thing. It's down to 5. It's a 5 out of 10. I wouldn't recommend it. If you're into it, if you're into something like this, let me know what you think. If you've read it, let me know what you think. It wasn't for me. That might be clear. But either way, thank you for watching, and don't treat women like objects.